Hello health champions, today I want to talk about low carb foods and no carb foods and the real reason people are on low carb diets in the first place. What are the best kinds of foods to get healthy and reach your goals? Coming right up. A low carb diet is often considered something under 100 grams or even under 50 grams of net carbs per day. And for a ketogenic diet, often people try to get even lower, like 25 or 30 grams per day. And some people go on a zero carb diet. But while we do want to keep the carbs under control, is that really what we're looking for? Well, it's really the insulin response that we're looking for. And carbs are not the only food that will trigger insulin. Protein and fat also trigger a little bit of insulin. So we want to understand a little bit more about the food that we choose than just the carbohydrates. When we talk about a zero carb food, there's really no such thing in my opinion, because true zero carb, those are things like water and apple cider vinegar and tea and coffee. They have zero of all the macronutrients and 0 calories. So yeah, that's what you can use during a fast, but they can't sustain us in the long run. What we're really looking for is the insulin response. And carbs are the first thing to cut back on because carbs turn into glucose, and glucose raises blood sugar, and it does it instantaneously. It does it as soon as you put the food in your mouth, you have an insulin response because your body senses that sweetness. Protein has amino acids that can turn into carbs, into glucose, but it does it much, much slower. And fat contains something called glycerol that can also turn into a little bit of glucose, but it does it super slow and it does it much later. So even though we want to cut back on carbs, I think there's more to understand about a zero carb diet. I'm not opposed to carnivore, but people who go on a carnivore diet and eating a lot of protein, they're not technically on a zero carb diet because even though the meat doesn't have carbohydrates in it, the protein turns into glucose relatively quickly. So it's just different forms of energy that trigger different kinds of insulin.